He died alone, in a small hotel room, on the 33rd floor, with 80 cents in his pocket. The man who lit up the world could not afford to pay his own rent. The man whose inventions powered entire cities was found dead by a maid 3 days after he stopped breathing, because nobody had checked on him. His name was Nikola Tesla, and the story of how the man who electrified the planet died forgotten, broke, and alone is one of the most painful injustices in the history of human genius. This is that story. Let's go back to the beginning, to a stormy night in 1856 in a tiny village called Smiljan in what is now Croatia. Legend says Tesla was born exactly at the stroke of midnight during a violent thunderstorm. The midwife, frightened by the lightning, supposedly said the child would be a child of darkness. His mother quickly corrected her. "No," she said, "he will be a child of light." Nobody in that small farmhouse could have imagined how true those words would become. Tesla's father was a strict Orthodox priest. He wanted his son to follow him into the church. But young Nikola had a different kind of obsession. He was fascinated by machines, by motion, by the invisible forces of nature that nobody else seemed to notice. He once said that as a boy he could see complete inventions in his mind, fully built, fully working, before he ever touched a single tool. This was not normal childhood imagination. This was something else entirely. But his childhood was not easy. When Tesla was just 7 years old, his older brother Dane was killed in a horse-riding accident. Dane had always been considered the brilliant one, the favorite, the future of the family. Tesla later admitted that this tragedy haunted him for the rest of his life. He felt he could never live up to the memory of a brother who had died too young to be remembered as anything but perfect. Some historians believe this early trauma is part of what drove Tesla to work obsessively for the rest of his life, as if trying to prove to a family that had already lost its golden child that he too was worth something extraordinary. As a teenager, Tesla fell seriously ill with cholera. He was bedridden for months, and at one point, his own father, the strict priest, sat beside his sickbed and promised that if Nikola survived, he could study engineering instead of becoming a priest. Tesla recovered, and he never forgot that promise. He enrolled at the Austrian Polytechnic in Graz, and there, something happened that would define the rest of his life. He watched a demonstration of a Gram dynamo, an early electrical generator, and he noticed something deeply wrong with it. Sparks were flying from the brushes, energy was being wasted, the whole machine seemed clumsy and inefficient. Tesla told his professor there had to be a better way, a way to generate electricity without these wasteful, sparking parts. His professor laughed in front of the entire class. He told Tesla that what he was describing was, quote, "a beautiful idea, but it is equivalent to a perpetual motion machine. It is impossible." Most students would have accepted that humiliation and moved on. Tesla did not. That single moment of public ridicule became an obsession that would consume him for years. He became convinced that alternating current, a system where electricity flows back and forth instead of in one direction, was the key, a better, cleaner, more efficient way to power the world. But he had no money, no laboratory, and no way to prove it. For years, the idea simply lived inside his head, fully formed, waiting. In 1882, while walking through a park in Budapest with a friend reciting poetry, Tesla suddenly stopped walking. He grabbed a stick and began drawing in the dirt. His friend thought he was having some kind of breakdown, but Tesla was not breaking down. He was seeing it. The entire system, the rotating magnetic field, the complete design for an alternating current motor, appearing in his mind exactly as it would later appear in reality. He later said this was the single most important moment of his entire life. But having a vision and building an empire are two very different things. Tesla eventually made his way to America in 1884, arriving in New York with 4 cents in his pocket, a few of his own poems, and a letter of recommendation to the most powerful inventor in the world. The letter reportedly said, "I know 2 great men, and you are one of them. The other is this young man." The letter was addressed to Thomas Edison. For a while, Tesla worked for Edison's company, and Edison was impressed enough to offer him an enormous challenge. He told Tesla that if he could redesign Edison's inefficient direct current generators, he would pay him $50,000, a fortune at the time. Tesla worked for months, barely sleeping, and successfully completed the redesign. When he asked for his payment, Edison reportedly laughed and said, "Tesla, you don't understand our American humor." He never paid him. Tesla quit on the spot. He was now in a foreign country with no job, no money, and a wounded sense of betrayal that would shape the rest of his career. For a brief period, things got even worse. Tesla was so desperate for money that he was forced to take a job digging ditches for $2 a day. The very same man whose mind contained the blueprint for a technology that would one day power the entire planet. This is the part of the story most people never hear. The genius who would later light up entire cities was, for a time, digging holes in the ground just to survive. But fate, or perhaps sheer stubbornness, intervened. A construction supervisor overheard Tesla explaining his alternating current ideas to a coworker and was so impressed that he introduced him to investors. This connection eventually led Tesla to a man who would become both his greatest supporter and, indirectly, the cause of one of the most brutal business wars in American history. His name was George Westinghouse. Westinghouse believed in Tesla's alternating current system, and he paid Tesla generously for the rights to his patents, an arrangement that included a royalty of $2.50 for every horsepower of electricity sold using Tesla's system. If that royalty had remained in place, Tesla would have become one of the richest men who ever lived. But that's not what happened. What happened next became known as the War of Currents, and it was one of the dirtiest, most vicious business battles in American history. Edison had invested heavily in direct current technology, and he saw Tesla's alternating current system, now backed by Westinghouse, as a direct threat to his entire empire. So Edison launched a campaign of fear. He began publicly electrocuting animals, dogs, cats, even an elephant, using alternating current, trying to convince the public that Tesla's system was deadly and dangerous. He even helped develop the first electric chair using alternating current, specifically so the public would associate Tesla's invention with death and executions. It was, by any measure, one of the most ruthless smear campaigns in the history of technology. Tesla and Westinghouse fought back the only way they could, through proof. In 1893, they won the contract to power the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, lighting up the entire fair with alternating current, dazzling millions of visitors with a vision of the electric future. It was a stunning public relations victory, but it came at an enormous financial cost to Westinghouse, who was now in a desperate battle to keep his company afloat against Edison's backers. And here, Tesla did something almost unbelievable. When Westinghouse came to him and admitted the company might collapse under the weight of those generous royalty payments, Tesla looked at the contract that would have made him fantastically wealthy, the contract guaranteeing him millions upon millions of dollars, and tore it up. He told Westinghouse he would not let his friend's company fail because of him. In that single moment, Tesla gave up what would today be worth billions of dollars. He chose loyalty over fortune. It was an act of extraordinary generosity, and it would haunt him financially for the rest of his life. With Westinghouse's company saved, alternating current eventually won the war of currents completely. Today, it is the standard system used to power nearly every home and city on Earth. But the man who invented it had just walked away from the money that would have come with it. Free from financial worry, at least for now, Tesla turned his attention to even bigger dreams. He began experimenting with wireless transmission of electricity and information decades before anyone else even imagined such a thing was possible. In 1899, in Colorado Springs, Tesla built a massive experimental laboratory and conducted tests so powerful that he reportedly created man-made lightning, bolts of electricity over 100 feet long, and accidentally knocked out the entire town's power grid. It was during this period that Tesla claimed to have received mysterious signals through his equipment, signals he believed might be communications from another planet. The press mocked him relentlessly, but Tesla didn't care. He believed he was on the edge of something that would change human civilization forever. He envisioned a world where electricity could be transmitted through the air itself, without wires, available to everyone, everywhere, almost for free. He found a backer willing to fund this dream, the wealthy financier J.P. Morgan, and construction began on a massive tower on Long Island called Wardenclyffe Tower. This was meant to be Tesla's masterpiece, a structure that would transmit free wireless energy and communication across the entire globe. But there was a problem that would ultimately destroy the project. When J.P. Morgan asked exactly how this technology would make money, Tesla reportedly explained that the technology had the potential to provide free, unlimited electricity to everyone on Earth. Morgan, a man who had built his entire fortune on controlling and metering resources, was reportedly horrified by the idea. If electricity was free and available to everyone, there would be no way to charge for it, no way to profit from it. Morgan withdrew his funding. The tower, Tesla's grandest vision, was left unfinished and was eventually demolished for scrap metal during World War I, sold for a fraction of what it had cost to build. Tesla had risked everything on a dream of free, universal energy for all of humanity. And the financial system of his era was simply not built to support a future without profit. This single decision, more than perhaps any other, marked the beginning of Tesla's long, slow decline into poverty. Over the following decades, Tesla continued inventing, continued dreaming, continued filing patents. His mind never stopped working. He claimed to have designs for death rays, for earthquake machines, for technologies that even today sound like science fiction. But he had no business sense, no interest in protecting his patents from being stolen, and absolutely no desire to compromise his ideas for the sake of profit. He moved from hotel to hotel in New York City, often unable to pay his bills, sometimes settling debts by handing over unpublished scientific papers instead of cash. The man who had once turned down a fortune out of loyalty was now too proud, or perhaps too broken, to ask for help. He developed an intense, almost desperate love for pigeons, feeding them daily in the parks of New York, and famously claimed to have fallen in love with one particular white pigeon that visited his hotel room window. He said that when that pigeon died, something inside him died as well. To the outside world, it looked like the sad decline of a once brilliant mind. But Tesla never stopped believing that his ideas, free energy, wireless communication, technologies the world wasn't ready for yet, would one day be understood. On January 7, 1943, a maid at the Hotel New Yorker, ignoring Tesla's strict instructions never to be disturbed, entered his room because she had a bad feeling. She found him dead, alone, in his bed. He was 86 years old. He had no wife, no children, and at the time of his death, his personal estate was valued at almost nothing. The man who had illuminated the modern world died in near total obscurity. His greatest dreams unfinished. His name nearly forgotten by the public he had served. But here is the part of the story that should give you chills. Within hours of his death, agents from the United States government's Office of Alien Property seized all of Tesla's papers. His notes, his research, everything in his hotel room. To this day, historians debate exactly what was in those documents and why the government moved so quickly to secure them. Some say it was simply standard procedure for a foreign-born inventor with sensitive wartime patents. Others believe Tesla's final research held secrets far beyond what the world was ready to understand. We may never know the full truth. What we do know is this: the man who refused to take a fortune to save a friend's company, the man who walked away from billions to give the world free energy, the man who lit up the Chicago World's Fair and powered Niagara Falls, in the unit of magnetic strength named after him, in a car company that bears his name, in countless documentaries, books, and conversations about genius, sacrifice, and the price of dreaming too far ahead of your time. But the real lesson of Tesla's life is not simply that he was brilliant. It's that brilliance alone is never enough. Tesla changed the world more than almost any human being in modern history, and he died with nothing. Not because he failed, but because he refused to let money guide his choices. He chose loyalty over wealth. He chose humanity's future over his own comfort. And in a world built on profit, that kind of sacrifice came at the highest possible price. Perhaps that is Tesla's true legacy, not just the inventions, but the warning that even the man who could see the future with perfect clarity could not protect himself from being forgotten by the very world he illuminated. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to ChronosX Secrets for more untold stories that change the world.